What's going to go blue?
Oh, that goes blue. We have contact, I understand. So people in the weather sphere probably can't hear me, but hello. Hi. Yes, indeed. So we're going to be doing this session on press and media and writing, and because it's being recorded, we'll take questions at the end. It'll probably be easier that way. So we're going to probably spend about an hour going through issues about how to frame, in particular, tax and potentially corruption as well. So we're here to talk about capturing the media, which, as I think, it can be done. I think press work in this area is a really fertile and an excellent area, and I mean, I'll just show you why I think it, because it's what I've kind of been doing for the last 25 years in different guises. So I was started as a business journalist, working a long time in Fleet Street, got into tax issues about 2004-05, just when Tax Justice Network started up. And did a lot of work in that area. Left the papers in 2010 to work with the Fair Trade Foundation on media and policy, and was also writing some reports for NGOs, Christian Aid, Publish What You Pay. I got into country by country reporting. Did a lot of work on that area, and I did comms, as you can see, for Fair Trade Foundation, DJN, and the Financial Transparency Coalition, which I'm sure most of you know. And then after a year of doing that, I got a call to go back into journalism. So I now work as an investigative journalist, working in mainly on tax, political funding, lobbying, and housing. And I also run a reporting and training project called Finance Uncovered, which is I think a great program. We try and give journalists and campaigners all around the world the investigative skills and tools to report on illicit finance, and then we support the journalists and campaigners when they are doing their research and work on collaborations. So that is about me. So I guess I've reported on this, and I've also kind of done managed press campaigns in this area. So we put out 4 questions, and 9 people kindly responded, and that was really, really helpful, and I hope they will reflect what people's priorities are. And we had 9 responses, and they were mainly focused on writing and getting journalists' attention. I mean, those were the kind of baskets in which they fell into. The writing areas were, some people expressed the need to kind of understand how to prioritise different sentiments in their writing, in their releases or their blogs. The ability to get clarity and yet technically to have that technical information communicated, and that is a very kind of interesting and difficult thing. Not necessarily difficult, but it's a bit of a trap in a certain respect. Capturing stories with headlines. Again, that's practice. It's kind of, you get that, I guess, through just looking at newspapers and understanding the essence of a story. And then getting journalists' attention, creating relationships and capturing their imaginations and the rules of engagement. Those are the things that people seem to be wanting to kind of get more guidance with. And one person was interested in investigative techniques, which is really cool. I'm not sure, I don't know who that is, but we can talk about that another time maybe. And the course that we do might be So, capturing the imagination, I actually think, where money meets power and class and business. The nexus between business and politics, I think, is where drama is. Business, power, politics. This is, this is kind of the essence of the world in which we live, the essence of globalization. And I've just got a few slides just to show where some of this kind of drama is. This is about Britain, but this story can be told in any country, but in Britain, you can see Apple, for instance, had, this was about 3 years ago, £6 billion worth of sales. That would be what analysts, in this case enders, would estimate their profits to be. That's how much tax they should be paying. That, in 1 year, was the tax that Apple paid. I mean, look at that. That's a big disparity. Amazon is pretty much the same. It follows exactly the same path. In fact, in some ways, it's worse. 3.2 billion, profits 150 million. That's what the profit should be. The tax gap is between those two figures. These are huge amounts of money. The story is the same. This is out of date, this Google figure, but you can see there were stories about Google which made the press in the UK, and they could make the press in any country where you can understand where you can get the accounts. And most countries you can get accounts, particularly the public company. In Europe, it is. So this is a kind of a story of a massive tax gap. This is a story of systemic abuse. Now, the story is the same in America, as we all know, but this is just I just want to give you an indication as to the mad world in which we live in. So you can see if you go to the US Stock Exchange and all the accounts of Apple, for instance, in 2013, they had that much cash. That's $146 billion, which is probably about, that's the NHS budget in this country, more or less, £100 million. That's the health budget in the UK. Now, they have this much money in their foreign subsidiaries, which is that is the amount of profits that they built up in the Bermuda, Cayman Islands. It's all in their accounts. Now, it doesn't just sit there. It actually is invested in US Treasury debt, US sovereign and government agency debt. And that money is getting interest. So we live in a world in which US taxpayers are paying interest on tax-avoided cash to these companies. And this is the upside-down world. This is, I don't know if anyone's seen The Producers by Mel Brooks. It's a kind of a film in which these two producers think that they can make lots of money by actually having a play that closes after the second night because they can get loads of money on the insurance. So they produce a musical called Springtime for Hitler. They think that's going to just run for 2 days. It's a ridiculous scenario to make some money. And this is, I think, the Mel Brooks' second film on that basis. It is a mad world. As you can see, Microsoft, $77 billion that they have built up in cash because they don't want to pay tax on it. And this is all in their accounts, and you can see this is the amount of money they've got in foreign subsidiaries, which basically means the Cayman Islands and Bermuda. That's the amount of money they have invested in US Treasury debt. That's a huge amount of money. Those just 4 companies total that amount of investment in US Treasury debt. If they were a country, that would be the 13th biggest investor in America. They don't just invest in sovereign debt, they invest in other countries' debt and in corporate debt. And in fact, they really got big corporate debt last year. To me, I don't know if you kind of get your heads around this. I don't know, do you get your heads around it? Can you see where I'm coming from on this? This is an indication of how mad. I guess my job is to try and communicate how mad this is. And if people are going like this, that means it hasn't quite worked. In essence, they have got huge amounts of money that they're not repatriating to their tax authorities, and they're investing in US debt, and they're getting interest on that. So they're earning revenue off their tax-avoided cash, which the taxpayer is paying. That's story. And actually, when we did that story, Carl Levin, who is a quite famous US senator, who just retired recently, he was head of the investigations committee. He talked to this story. Great. Anyway, final kind of stat that I think is really interesting, and it's something we all kind of feel. But this stat shows how the top 0.1% have increased their earnings hugely, whereas the bottom 90% have lost. We can see in 1980, this was the average salary of the bottom 90%. And in 2010, it's actually gone down 30 years, whereas the top percentages have seen their increase, their wealth and salaries increase. This is from Thomas Piketty, as most of you know, a really pivotal book on inequality about last year. And if you ever want to kind of refer to a statistic that kind of indicates how in the last 30 years the gap between the rich and poor has increased, this, in my opinion, tells you all you need to know. So that, again, this is in my kind of attempt to capture the imagination. This is the economic reality in which we're dealing with. So most of you know that tax havens aren't actually islands, and not a typical tax haven. People might recognise as a palm-fringed Caribbean island or a snowy alpine mountain, but actually Europe has huge amounts of different European countries have lots of different tax incentives. All of these countries offer amazing incentives to businesses and individuals. So actually, when people go on about tax havens, what have you, really, we're talking about European countries. I'm just going to show you very briefly some of the tax incentives that some leading European countries offer. Here in Britain, most people will know about non-domiciled tax status. This is a status that appeals to the likes of Russian oligarchs and all sorts of tycoons from around the world. But they can live in the UK and not be taxed on their overseas earnings. This is the thing that attracts people to the UK. It's not the weather, it's not really the theatres or the restaurants, it's the bits. The restaurants and theatres help and do very well because we appeal to non-domiciled residents. And there are about 120,000 of them. We have investment visas where you have huge amounts of tax waivers if you pay £5 million. Our companies benefit. If you're based your company in Britain, you have certain benefits under this tax incentive, I guess, called controlled foreign companies. This means that you can repatriate your wealth in a tax haven at around 5%. It's a huge lure to companies around the world. Patent boxes, these are quite technical tax breaks for companies that, in particular, the pharmaceutical industry to come here, and anyone who does research and development, huge incentives. Lots of revenues can be written off on the back of this. Our corporation tax now is around 20%, and it will get lower, which is beginning to compete with Ireland. In the UK, we have access to the spider's web of UK tax havens, and we have a very big lobbying industry, and the lawyers and private banks are all set up for the non-doms. So we are effectively a tax haven. Many people, even the IMF. Netherlands, I think there might be some Dutch people in the Weathersphere. There was a story out today from SOMO showing how Holland is in fact the biggest foreign investor in a huge number of countries, and this is because they have double tax treaty agreements which allow them to reduce withholding taxes on dividends, interest. It's a massive incentive. It's why 80 of the 100 biggest firms have financing firms based in the Netherlands. Huge amounts of incentives that the Netherlands offers to companies in what is a race to the bottom. Just for, if you're very, very rich, this is what Gibraltar can do for you if you're a high net worth individual. You only have your first £80,000 tax. It's an amazing incentive to live there, and you don't have to actually live in Gibraltar. If you own property, you can get this tax benefit, and your children or spouse's income can be included in your tax liability, which is good for them and good for you to write off some of their tax. And they have no capital gain tax, inheritance tax, or estate duty. But that's why Gibraltar rocks in. Malta, finally, is an excellent jurisdiction to obtain a separate passport, which is what a lot of Russians do. They have all sorts of incentives: no inheritance, no gift or wealth tax, flat tax of 15% on foreign source income. And they actually pay no income tax on foreign source capital gains. We read all about this very handily on No More Tax Stop. So this is kind of like the architecture. This is kind of like the the tax system that we have created. I mean, we could maybe talk another time about how to go about this more in depth. But I think communicating how we allow people not to pay tax ought to interest journalists. It is kind of like there are stories in all this. The lobby needed to keep to create these rules. There are stories here, in my opinion, and they're kind of national specific as well. So for an organisation like ActionAid to kind of understand those tax breaks that countries in Europe are offering can be a great opportunity, and then you can kind of bring in the effect it has on developing countries potentially. That's something maybe. I'm sure a lot of you think like that anyway, but if you don't, this could be quite an interesting way of approaching stories and journalists. So it's getting under the skin of what the country you're based in actually does for company, and then working out the effect that has on them. So, in my opinion, when we're talking about tax and the systemic abuse and the tax gap and corruption, I mean, we are in the business of hugely dramatic issues: money, power, elites, and class. Who runs the world? Which rules have they created? And in the international taxation system, it is recognised that that there is systemic failure. That's why there is a G20 process to reform the international taxation system. The stories about Google and Facebook, Microsoft, are playing out really, really strongly, and they have forced the G20 and the OECD to deal with the situation, and it's been supported by people from civil society and people like UK Uncut. They have pointed out the systemic failure, and now the challenge is to work out whether the responses will solve the problem. I mean, we're in the business of exposing grand corruption, and the effect that has on countries' medical education systems is a very, very strong and vivid link. Lobbying, who creates the rules, whose interests are being served. These are really, really brilliant, fertile areas of that we are all part of, I think. And this grinding of genocide of poverty, this is a phrase, it's not my phrase, it's a phrase from a really, really loyal Martin Kenny, one of the world's finest anti-corruption lawyers, based in the Cayman Islands. He worked, and he is an asset recovery guy as well as an anti-corruption lawyer. And he's an amazing guy. But he's writing a paper on human rights and corruption and the tax system, which is an area that people haven't been properly able to nail as a kind of. And I think if anyone can do it, he will be able to do it. It's worth keeping an eye out. But this grinding genocide of poverty created by all these issues. That, I kind of a bit cheeky, but if we can't sell this, we're in the wrong job. I mean, this is the lifeblood of news and how. Now the challenge might be to actually print some of this stuff. That's another issue altogether. But it is all there for us to try and frame and navigate. That's my take on it. So let's push on. In some ways, it'd be quite a good time to have a few questions at this point. But if anyone has got any questions at this point, or not, you can email them as well if you want, and you can interrupt with email questions at any time. Actually, okay. Well, we'll push on. If do interrupt for I've got to stand up here. I'm back. The words of children, animals, and okay. So it is hard selling the development angle on all this. It is, and this is what's coming from the survey. But I do think it is actually possible to dominate the news agenda, even including issues of development. And the one project in particular that achieved that was fair trade cotton, which to all intents and purposes is such a marginal fringe issue. But I'm going to show you in a while how we managed to get that story really big in the media, on newspapers, editorials, and on global television, which was quite ridiculous. Now, I've got this silly concept called Data Plus, but I kind of I see it as a way, as ingredients to create your best chance of getting decent responses in the press. And I'm going to now define what that is. So, I see Data Plus as new, relevant and headline-grabbing data. Most stories require some kind, whether it's a percentage or a dollar figure, that you have to have this thing. Well, you don't have to, but it kind of 99% of occasions you do. I've just proved it by saying 99%. Now, alongside the data, case studies. Not literally a person talking necessarily. It could be how a company or an individual taking advantage of the situation that you're describing. But you have to kind of make your data come to life, whether it's in news copy or in feature copy. And you have to make people understand why this is important, which is context and analysis. And you do that in a reasonably authoritative way. And then it's got to be it's got to be in an arresting, compelling format. Things have got to be well produced, whether it's an email or a report. It's got to be it's got to look good. It can't be too scruffy. It's got to be kind of symmetrical, basic stuff like that, which is hard because I think I'm spending mistakes. No, like that. And it's published at the right time, at that opportune moment, whether it's on the eve of a major conference or on an anniversary, or just when an event is about to happen. Those are the kind of ingredients in my head that mean that you're going to have the best chance of success. And it's a management-ish challenge to create all that. But I mean, just as an anecdote, last year, at the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, we had a leak of the seating plan from the major Conservative Party fundraising event. We had a whole seating plan, it was 500 people, and we had a month to turn it around. Why did we have just a month to turn it around? Because it was coming up to the anniversary of that event. So we wanted to produce that story on the eve of the next major summer party. And so that would be the obvious time to do it, just when everyone's driving in with their chauffeur-driven cars. We've got this story about who are the people, how much money was in them. We actually worked out how much money was in the room and what industries they came from and who they were sitting next to and why they were sitting next to those people, what possibly they could gain from sitting next to a particular minister. But it had to be on that eve of the thing, so that's why we were working through 3 weekends to do that, to map those. So you get all that. So we had, on that occasion, we had how much money was in them, which was the top line, and we had the tycoons who were sitting next to the transport secretary, the shipping tycoons sitting next to the transport secretary. We had some of the context and analysis that involved that, as well as party political funding issues. Was it in an arresting, compelling format? Well, that may be argued because it was just a story, but it was hopefully well written. And it was published at the Opportune London. So that's my data plus theory, TN. So I thought it would be quite useful to look at one of this was a project that I was involved with. It was a report called The Price of Offshore Revisited. And it was published 3 years ago. And it was probably the most successful kind of press report I've ever been involved with. And it went around the world, and it went on box big Europe, and it was a kind of report in which everything went right. So, and it had really good information. So it kind of isn't necessarily completely representative, but there are elements of it that I think are quite interesting. So this was a report that actually totaled up the amount of offshore wealth held by individuals all around the world. And it was written by a former chief economist of McKinsey's, which is a major management consultant. So he had great kudos. And we made sure that people knew about that when we communicated it. But, there's a lesson there. If you're doing a report, if you have a person who has got credibility, make sure you use that because it will help make the report fly. So he took 2 years to research this thing. And he wrote a 40-page report. At the same time, I was working part-time teacher at Tax Justice Network, and we decided to do another report as well. It wasn't good enough just to have one report, because in my opinion, the barrier to entry the barrier to get stuff published is high. You have to force your agenda onto journalists. So you have to kind of like say, we haven't just got this report that's the most up-to-date authoritative report on offshore wealth. We've got this other report. And this other report was about why the system used to map inequality actually it doesn't work. Sorry, let me start again. The report basically showed that inequality is far bigger than people have previously recognised because it doesn't take into account offshore wealth. And we went to about 10 of the world's leading economists who specialise in inequality, and they all confirmed that actually offshore wealth isn't factored into the mainstream studies mapping inequality. So inequality is, as you suspect, much worse than we all believe it to be. So we put those two reports together to give the whole agenda more substance. And then we identified a particular journalist who we thought would do the best job in this area, who happened to be the Observer Economic Editor. We thought that she was well liked in the newspaper. She's, people listen to her. She's got the ear of the editor, and we liked her, and she could give us a quick decision. She happened to be the business editor at the time, so she was in the conferences, when the newspapers had their conferences. So we thought she would do our job. She would do a good job for us. So then I basically wrote a press release, which I will show you in a minute, actually. And so I had to turn the report into a news story, and that's fine, and it was quite easy to do, to write, using the kind of training that I had as a journalist, to do a straight, simple news story. But the only thing, apart from, I think, making it sense, I actually worked out that the amount of money held offshore, put them aside the American and Japanese economy. That was a big number by contexture. And that's important, and it actually ended up in it was right in the introduction of the news story. They just lifted it. So we had two separate, and we'll go into writing a bit more during this session. So we had two separate reports, and we gave her a draft of the release. It wasn't actually signed off, but because we wanted to give her enough time to work with this story, we gave her a draft, and gave the head of Stewart pre-interviews with the author, so she had everything ready. And we were gambling that the Observer would run this really big, and then other newspapers would follow it up. That was the kind of like the gamble that we took. And we released the report on the last weekend before the parliamentary summer recess, because that was, which was pretty late. It was the last moment to release it because then the summer holidays happened. We wanted to make sure people hadn't gone off on their summer holidays before that story went out. So that was the scenario. And I'll show you the press release in a minute. But we were really lucky with this report because we actually we released it on I think it was July 22nd, thereabouts it was going to go. But on that week leading up to it, Mexico HSBC blew up and all this drug money came out. So people were focused on the illicit world. And so that was excellent. The story was listed on page 5 on the Saturday morning, the journalists were telling me. But an editor just saw it on page 5 and just suddenly thought, no, that's going to be the splash. So that was lucky. And so the Observer basically put that story on the front page. And there was already a spread in the paper. And they had an editorial because of this HSBC story as well, which they linked to the report. They had the exclusive. So they had the whole thing, and then the BBC rang me up on the Sunday morning. In 3 hours, it was a headline story on all of the BBC network. And then from there, you got viral, and it went around the world. Turkey, China, the Fox TV. Now, you probably can't see this very well, but you've got the presentation. But this is the email that I wrote to the BBC planning editor. And this is kind of interesting because I pulled every single kind of string that I could in a sense. Because so I work at the bureau with Angus, who I knew this guy knows. So I was just kind of trying to get him familiar. So he kind of knows who I am now, although we never met. So I'm just keeping it very, very simple. But I'm trying to. This guy hasn't got the exclusive to the story. I'm wanting him to follow up on it. So we have done the most detailed research ever conducted, actually by the supervision taxpayer. Well, you better buy them. And that was true. So I was lucky. This was a very good report. But you can sum it up in a sentence. That's what it is. And then you have your reveals, which you can sum up again in 8 lines. And all very easy. I'm going to tell you up front with you, they've got their newspaper exclusive, but we're releasing it Sunday for Monday, boom. It's a very simple, and it's all kind of, you can see, take it or leave it really. Now, in Britain we have this thing called Orkana. Do any of you in the press use Orkana? Orkana is amazing. It's £800 a year, but it's got the list of every single journalist in the UK, from the local to the national. It's got their emails, it's got their telephone numbers, it's got their Twitter feeds. So you go to BBC Planning and you can see everybody who's in the BBC Planning, everyone in their business unit, and then you can all the producers, particularly the planners are the most important people because they just basically put it into the system. So that was that. Good Corner, you can get to any journalist in the country, in university in this country, they should use it. And if anyone wants to be an entrepreneur in a different country, they should produce a Good Corner in their country. Really good service. And although you don't want to leave that to me. Now, I'm just going to show you the press release that I did on this, which I'll send you if you're interested. But it's basically, I'm going to talk a bit more about writing in a while, but I mean, it's just keeping it so simple and just the essential information, short sentences. I mean, in journalism school, they tell you never to write a sentence of more than 35 words. And you can see why, because you run out of breath if you speak that. And so, I mean, revealed is now everyone does. So this is just very, very simple language. And short sentences have great in my discussion. We can see something. Well, get some of that. I like pithy kind of writing. It's easy to read. I like short paragraphs as well because it doesn't feel too intimidating. But this is like, you've got to make it like a newsreader would read it. At least 21 trillion unreported private financial wealth was owned by wealthy individuals by tax havens at the end of 2010. Now that's not what a newsreader would read, but it's simple. You just, it's just simple. And you go down, and you've got the bullet points. I love bullet points because it gives body to your report. You've got there the paragraph about the research for the Tax Justice Network by Ford and McKinsey. But you have a whole range of, you've got your bullet points there, which are the news lines. These are the news lines. These are what are going to convince people to report on your story. And I'll talk about this again, and I'll read a thumbs up. I can send this out because I mean, the only reason why I'm doing this is because this release works. But it's not the only one. This is the principle I use, and it's like remembering the data plus thing. Okay, I don't know whether that was that, but I think it might be useful to see the things now. Is it full screen? Maybe screen.
Are you masters?
Right. Okay. So I mean, and then in this particular cookbook, now there's no art to this. I remember when I was at the Financial Transparency Coalition, there was somebody, one of my bosses, would say, press releases should never be more than one page. Well, that one was about 6 pages, and people don't want to wade through all sorts of material. This one had 5 attachments to it. I can show it to you. They were kind of, and I suppose in some ways it convinced people that we were bloody serious with all this stuff. And we had tables and all sorts of things. We gave them everything they needed, but it was in a very kind of delineated way. and yeah, it did work. I'm just showing you this. This has got nothing to do with tax or anything, but this is about data. Well, I did a lot of stuff on the housing crisis, and it's about equivalence. We basically worked out the amount of money spent by big cities in the UK on housing people in hostels and temporary accommodation. It was in the context of big cuts being made to benefit a few years ago, which are still carrying on. But we could show that through freedom of information questions asked of lots of different local authorities in the UK, that the cost of housing London's homeless was 2 billion quid over 4 or 5 years. 5 years. And that could produce 76,000 London homes. It's just, that data ran on the front page of the Guardian newspaper. And it had lots of weight underneath it. One of the things it had underneath it was this piece of data. So we basically did 3 data studies in one, put them all together, in order to muscle our way onto the news agenda. And so we did this data to show effectively the economic cleansing of London. We were the first people to do this. And we could see the amount of households moved out of their borough. And we showed that it was about inner London, where people being moved out on to the fringes of London. But this data, it tells its own story. So then it makes life so much easier. Then when you get your case studies, it doesn't write itself, but you're creating the parameters for really for good stories. We actually, the Bureau is a kind of like an independent news agency, so it's not unlike an NGO in that sense, trying to sell in stories to the mainstream media. And we do it. Well, this particular project has 3 data studies all together. We took it, as well as talking to politicians, looking at the context of economic cuts and that effect it's having on the housing, on homelessness. There's a lot of information there, but that data takes the priority. So, how can we sell development when people, the public, editors and journalists are tired and suspicious of things? Which I guess they probably are. I don't know if everyone agrees, but I think as a general rule, unfortunately, that is the case. But they are interested in how a Dutch company, if you're Dutch, is acting abroad. And people are interested in tax, well, they are in this country, and I think increasingly in Europe. The tax justice is one of the top issues when Avaz and various others do their polling. People are interested in this. They hate the idea that Google is paying tax, and not paying tax, and they are. So people are interested in this issue, and they're interested in justice. They are. It's just a fact. People do responsible stuff, and people are thirsty for news. So we can sell development if we kind of tick some of these boxes, in my opinion. And this is one area I think we're coming onto now, where this was, I think, in one sense, was probably the press thing that I was probably proudest of, because it was such on the face of it, a hard sell. Cotton subsidies. No one really, they're not on the agenda. West African farmers who are locked out of the global trade system because of rich countries paying subsidies to their cotton farm. Now, it was a bit of an issue about 12, 15 years ago. When people were interested in trade, and they were, West African cotton farmers were held up as an icon of trade injustice. But 10 years later, no one was interested. It was a tax thing that people were interested in. So we thought, well, this is great. If no one's interested, we're going to bloody make them interested in it. And it was coming up to 10 years since the Doha trade round started. So we're going to, what I thought, I was working for trade at the time, and I was always interested in trade, but I thought the one thing I wanted to do was data. How much money have the rich countries given to their farmers? Let's work it out. And so there was a researcher who knew what she was doing, and I'm going to show you what she did. Because I think it was blinding. I was so happy when she did this. Okay, I'm just talking. Oops. Oops. There. I don't know if you can see this very well. But this was on the first page of the report. She, our amazing researcher, Aurelie Walker, Fair Trade is no longer there. She kind of like researched really very well to find out exactly how much money the EU, China, and the United States have given to their cotton farmers. And since the Doha trade round had been launched, we completely peer-reviewed this figure, and it was $47 billion worth of subsidy given to those farmers. And the Americans had got the most. And meanwhile, you've got these West African cotton farmers who are completely locked out, who are actually producing much more environmentally friendly cotton. They don't need all that water that the Americans and European farmers use. It's much because they have a natural climate for producing cotton. So they are competing against 47 billion. This is like the kind of definition of trade injustice, as far as we could see. So we went from there. That was the data. We actually had the data. Every time once you got over 30 billion, I thought we're home and dry. We have got a bloody great story here. But everything else will come to place. But you might notice in this report that the pictures are brilliant. We got one of the best fashion photographers to take these pictures, called Trevor Layton. He's an Essex boy, and we're now great. This is a really well-produced report. We made sure that we wanted to give this an arresting, compelling. The admin's cable on it, business secretary. We wanted to make this one of the best produced reports you could imagine. So it is worth having a look at, in my opinion. I'll tell you, I'll boast in a minute how well it did. Okay. So, I'll just talk a little bit more about that. So we had the great data, and we wanted to take a journalist to Mali. And the question was, who was going to do the best job for this report? Who was going to? And we went to this woman called Elizabeth Day. I don't know if anyone of you guys have heard of it, but she is, again, a really, really well-loved writer, as you observe. She's just a charming person, and she writes beautifully, and she writes for the kind of the new review part. She's not a business writer, she's not a news writer, she writes big interviews with big people. She just interviewed Lily Tomlin. She does all the kind of, and we thought, right, if we can convince her to come, then the paper will completely back this project. And I did work with her, but I never knew her. So I was coming at it cold. I did know her husband, but we never met socially or anything. And so we convinced her to go. She basically went to Mali for a week, and she wrote a fantastic piece. And it was so good that the editor started to do an editorial on this iniquity. And we were already press released it for the Monday where we were going to do the hard news story. And we were in an embarrassing position. I was in a ridiculous position when I got a call from a Guardian leader writer saying, we decided we wanted to do this as well. So we had two consecutive leaders on this story because of, the news story was good, and they hadn't seen the Observer piece yet, but because the news, somehow people got into it, could see it really quickly. It's data. They only saw the data. A colleague of mine thought we would invest in this project and got a prepared TV package and gave it to the BBC. And the BBC decided they were going to put it on their global news. They did a news on the BBC News 24 thing on it. And then Sky News got it after they read the Observer. So this marginal, it was ridiculous. It can sell, but it came down to the data, finding the right journey. That was. I mean, not all of these are two projects that are probably the best projects. I might talk about a project that was really, on the face of it, boring project that it did okay. So that dressing stuff, but that is I think development can sell. It can sell. Now, write like a god. This is easy to say, hard to do. I don't know. It's I've been writing for 26 years, and I still cock it up. And my editor yesterday said, "I can't stand that intro. Why don't you get something?" And I had a case study intro, a drop intro. And after she asked me to do a soft intro, and she said, "That case study talks to the data that you got, so go and get something else." And I want to get this project off my desk because it's really annoying and boring. So it's easy to say, right, like a god, but there are some tips. And, so you are writing to make people understand. People's attention spans 10 years ago were a bit rubbish, but they're now ultra rubbish, as we all know. My attention span is dreadful. So you've got to somehow find a way of holding it to the page, and you want them to agree and buy into your agenda. So you have to be clear about what the story is. And you have to muscle your way onto the news agenda. This is like although the web means that there's more news space, it's still competitive, as we all know. If you get a story in the paper, someone else doesn't. And, so you have to find a way of muscling it onto the news agenda. So basically, you've got to make it compelling and grab with your argument and writing. This is the game. That is the game. There might be some people that take a slightly less attritional view, but I think you have a sense of urgency because this is like, this stuff matters. You have, if it matters to you, you can communicate it much better. So these are the things I think about. Some of them have been told to me at journalism school, which I went to 25 years ago. Yeah, 25 years ago. So sweat on every word. This is the first thing they tell you at journalism school. If you don't need it, don't use it. So just be careful. Language in this has to be lean, not too florid. And active words. Not this is a grammar point, but they were saying. Don't say they were saying. They said. It's got to be direct. It's kind of like always active. It uses less words and it's easy to communicate. So use short sentences for effect. It's brilliant at the end of one or two sentences to have just like a short, 8-worder, because it kind of makes that point. It's brilliant. It is all about the headline, and we'll try and talk about that. Headlines do sell, but if you've got data, it makes things much easier. And then it's all about the intro. Intros, you can use 2 sentences for introductions. You have to try and contextualize why something's important in an introduction, but it's like you're really boiling it down, and it's like the essence. Look at people like Larry Elliott in The Guardian. or The Economist as to how they write their introductions. It is an art form. You're capturing the whole essence of your piece in an introduction and showing you why it's important. It's the most important thing. Unless you're doing what people call a drop intro, which is about some woman or man who has something happen to them, and why this suddenly is like representative of these things or drop intro. I can show you that point. They're very, very effective, but probably not when you're actually communicating news and stuff. Bullet points to add substance and urgency. Don't make them only 4 lines long. I mean, there's no rules in this, right? This is just general guidelines. Contextualise what this means and why it's important. Use equivalence, i.e., it's equivalent to the size of the American Japanese economy. It's the same size as the health budget. It could build this many houses or this many schools. You've got to link your paragraphs. Everything has to relate to the next one. So you kind of got to remind people what you talked about. Somehow, maybe there's another session on writing to be done. Because I love links. Links are brilliant because it just suddenly forces the reader to go to the next paragraph. Quotes. Quotes have to be very, very refined. I mean, this is all bloody obvious stuff, and I'm probably could do is show you examples. Evidence. You can't just put out a statement. You have to show what it means or why it's important. You want evidence. And then I find if I just smash something out and then polish it, I quite like that process of polishing. I sometimes kind of I'm a writer, so I actually, that's my favourite part of writing is once you've got the whole piece out and then you're refining it and you're crafting. You are writing it. Sometimes you can turn this stuff into poetry. I had a friend of mine who read a story and said, God, it's poetry. And that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to create these brilliant things that people will kind of like take on board. It's a challenge. It's a challenge to do that. But it is a great, obviously, great form. So, choosing the media platform and journalists, which was an issue raised by the survey. I had a chat with a good friend of mine who I was on with my first job in journalism, an insurance agent. Insurance magazine. I mean, you couldn't get a duller subject. I was there for 18 months. And actually, it wasn't dull because I did a story about how people who went for HIV tests weren't given life insurance and mortgages. This was in the early 90s when HIV was bubbling up and the pink pounds was just becoming a phenomenon. In fact, I think we were one of the Insurance Age magazine was one of the first magazines to actually in Britain to use the phrase the pink pounds. So it was a dull subject, and I was into that. That was a really good thing to make these poor insurance people deal with people who had the social awareness to have an HIV test and were being punished for it. Anyway, so this guy that I met in back 25 years ago, he now works with Dispatches, and he loves, as a TV man, working with a newspaper and an NGO. Altogether, that means that your story is more likely to be followed up, he believes, by television because they've got a newspaper doing it, so they like the newspapers. And the TV and the paper will follow it, or the TV people will follow it up because of the newspaper and vice versa. And they like having that alliance of people working together on a project. He's one of them of Britain's most respected TV presenters. And I thought that was very interesting. Now, so So that's a good thing to be aware of, I think, in some respects. Now, I think there was a friend of mine who kind of introduced to me the concept of the news wholesaler. I'll edit that out. The news wholesaler. These are like the big global media organisations, the Guardian, Reuters. Who else beyond the BBC? Maybe Sky, but they're not really global. But if you can get buy-in from a news wholesaler, you get the dominant effect, the herding mentality. If someone runs something big and it is a good story, they'll all pile in, and that's how it works on the bus, I'm sure. So those are things to think about. If you have got a really decent report and you think it could go big, then be aware that this could travel around the world. It can travel around the world in a week, and literally you can watch every country doing it. It's fantastic. So that's why you have to think of these things. Which publication will further your goal? Which journalists will do your work justice? And have they got clout? Are they well done? So you have to do the intelligence. And it pays off. Sometimes you get it wrong. And you get it wrong on a report that people spent weeks, months, maybe years on. And that's a shame, really. But those, you need to understand those things, I think. I mean, this is the obvious stuff that many people maybe reminding people rather than so relationships, journalistic relationships. Now, journalists can be really small-minded people who think that PRs and NGOs, PRs are kind of a lot of journalists will think that they are, in inverted commas, scum of the earth, maybe, or the enemy somehow. NGOs might be kind of naive, maybe. But, most people aren't like that. I think a lot of people are, have got a much better appreciation of reality. Most people understand we're all part of the game. We're all part of the chain, business, NGOs, media, press. None of us could survive without the other, in some respects. So we're all part of the game, and I think good people like that. So the best way to a journalist's heart is your insight, any gossip you can provide about a government's policy trajectory or individuals and just anecdotes and stories. I mean, that's journalists, like anyone, will love gossip, and that will give them insight into an area of life that they're reporting on. So it's up to press people to kind of to get involved in the machinery of what they're campaigning about in order to kind of bring this subject to life. And if you bring them that expertise, they will be beholden to you. They will do you a favour. They will listen. So you do need to meet them. Someone said, how can I meet a journalist if I haven't got a lunch budget? Well, you can afford maybe a coffee. Maybe. I don't know. Is it that bad? Surely. A bit of cake. But anyway, 15 minutes. If you know that you've got a story that's coming down the line, and if you've got an insight into a subject area that could be of interest, you have to look up to the intel on people, because if you want them to take on a story, you want to make sure they're the right people. So, not too long, but I thought we'd spend a little bit of time, because people spend, people in this survey that you did, there was people did spend, their work was concerned with reports quite a lot. It was also concerned with rapid reaction as well, in terms of inserting an agenda into a running stories. I haven't really talked about the other thing we talked about, keeping stories out of the media. So rapid reaction. I mean, it would be. I mean, in London, how many people would deal with rapid reaction in this room? Does anyone try and insert stories into a news agenda by no, we're not.
I deal with it, but I don't invite them myself. So I'm the kind of project manager for the campaign.
Right.
So normally I'm
Yeah.
a media person, work with the policy. So I'll say what I think about it.
Cool. Okay. Right. And I'm assuming some of you out there in West, but it is interesting. How can you get? When I had a job trying to place a smallholder at the centre of the food crisis debate about when I was a fair trade, that was fantastic. And actually, it was surprisingly. It really is. It's not difficult. We've got fair trade people talking about this on News at 10 on ITV and in all of the papers. And it's just about being organised and having the right message as well. But so from the work up, we basically looked at all of the relevant institutions in the food crisis debate, at the Food and Agricultural Organisation, based in Rome, the World Bank, United Nations. We looked at the major food companies when they were, or commodity companies when they had results, and we put them in a diary. So we knew those were the big days to hit. In particular, the statistics on global hunger. We knew exactly when they were coming, we had a simple message, which was that, I can't remember now exactly what it was, because it was 4 or 5 years ago, but it was something along the lines of, for the last 30 years, investment in agriculture has dwindled. Now there's a talk that the World Bank is going to invest more. We fear it's going to go to the big commodity companies, but if you invest in smallholder farmers, the volume of food that they can, or quantity of food that they can produce, will actually go a long way to solving the food crisis debate. These are the missing things in the food crisis debate. It was around all that stuff. It was quite simple, quite powerful, and different to the mainstream. It was actually solution-based. So that was a simple message. And we sent out, when it was like the hunger day, when the hunger stats were coming out, we put an alert to the relevant news desk. We will be commenting on this stuff, and it's expected to say that hunger is going up, or the number of people who go to bed hungry will go up, and we will be putting out a comment. So some of the desks might not even have that event on their planning agenda. So we were doing them a favour. And then we targeted the relevant wires and publications, and to give them the same state of journalists. And I kind of thought, right, well, let's see if we can find out from the United could expect as well. And surprise, a lot of these organisations, if you have a relationship with the FAO and whoever, they're all But basically, yeah, live blogs are brilliant. Live blogs save a story that are nearly done. We spent weeks, not months, trying to work out long priority investment. And we got scooped by New Minute, by Sky News, so they had got a tiny number of investors. This was a secret kid anyone to know about. And we had a full list, and we hit the Guardian news blog, and they ran the whole thing. And then our release was given to a select committee of we got the credit for the live they turn out.
Just let me one question about the
No worries.
it sounds like it's not written up there. It sounds like the whole of this story. Because I used to work on a smallholder campaign, and it was really hard to get enough news. But it sounds like this hung on the fact that you had quite a strong stance, so about the contribution smallholders would make to hunger as opposed to investment in agribusiness. So that was kind of the key of your story, and then everything else was a tactic for kind of getting that out there and how to communicate that.
Actually, on this occasion, we didn't have any statistics.
Didn't you?
No, it was just an idea. It was just purely an idea. So
it was just conjecture.
It was complete conjecture. I mean, I think it was based on the fact that investment in smallholder farming could produce really good yields that go a long way to solving rural community hunger. I think that is a fair thing to say. But
it wasn't
in any way quantified. But we were in a time in which global attention was on the food crisis, rising hunger, hugely rising commodity prices in the wake of the financial crisis. So it was a very, very hot topic. So we thought, right, we're going to get the smallholder into that debate, and land grab was beginning after the whole thing. So this was actually goes against everything I've probably said. It was pure conjecture. Although I do believe it was the kind of true. I think giving money to Cargills or other similar organisations, will they produce huge increased volumes of food against smallholder? I actually think it's a fine line. But that's rapid reaction. So I'm coming to the end now. So this is just a summary of what I'm talking about. And it's, you are selling headlines. You're selling data, headlines and data. That's the thing that will get into the news mix. It's not opinions unless it's a pop idol star or whatever someone says it's stupid. We're in the business. I mean, you can sell. There's a whole session you can do on opinion piece. We're selling stories. We're selling data, and I do think that you require depth. There's more depth that's required within reports and press materials than previously made in the case. So barrier to entry is a bit tougher in some respects, but it's also worth remembering that everyone needs news coverage. People have news agendas to fill, so we are part of that solution to that. Do remember this data plus thing. I think it does capture the ingredients of what gives people the best chance of getting their stuff into the press. And no, I'm not a scientist. There is no one way of doing it at all. And you can't get lucky every time, but you can give yourself a fighting chance. I think that's the thing. You've got to create circumstances to see the best you can. So that is my take on media. I hope it was useful. I hope it wasn't too much talking at you. Anyway, thank you. Thank you. So, if anyone has got any questions, if anyone's still alive out there.
Yeah, so yeah.
I think they're saying thank you.
Cool.
Can I maybe two questions? I don't know how quickly it will make sense. The first one is about is there a second chance? Like, for example, you really fail. I don't know, either there may be wrong timing or something. So Simon basically there's nothing like nobody really picks up and fail. So do you believe that there's a worse second chance? And maybe what are the conditions for the second chance to be successful? And second question was about I forgot.
That's a good question. Yeah, I think there are second chances. I think, it's obviously not easy, but I just think of last year when I produced, and it was journalistic, but I produced a long piece, and it was good. It was a good piece, and I was really proud of it. And we had chopped some of that article and given it to Vice News, and they ran this particular piece. It's about housing. And so we gave it to Vice News, and they basically ran the first half of the feature. And we tried to get Independent to run a news story, and they didn't. But 2 weeks later, I wasn't letting it go. I took an element of the story. It was a long report. It was effectively a report, 5,000 word piece on week. I took one element of it, which was it was a data story about within a piece about it was basically how much money the UK's biggest house builders have made in the last year, and that amount of money was got to the same level as what their profits were before the financial crisis. So we effectively back to where we were. And this was at a time when the amount of affordable homes was at its lowest. So they're making a huge amount of money, over £2 billion. And so we had this bit of data that we ran it 2 weeks after the story. So I think if you've got a strong piece of data, you can put it out. If a reporter died, and then you have to find what you have to re-nose it, as say, you have to find a new way in. But I think you can reheat, and I suppose I quite like the attitude of not taking it lying down, as we say. You're not admitting defeat, and find a way in. Sometimes it's not as good as you imagine it might be. But, yeah. So.
I had a couple of questions. So the first one is just kind of from an NGO perspective. So I know that you work for the Fair Trade Foundation and don't work for any other NGOs, but there's kind of often tension between the things that our organisation feels like it should be saying and what our brand is, and what you want to be saying is a news story. So I wondered if you had any insight or tips into how you navigated that, or advice for people that are kind of struggling with that, or even how you convince them of the value of getting news coverage, even not quite the tone that good idea.
Yeah, well, that's the issue, isn't it? I mean, if there's a kind of like a news line or a kind of a drift of policy or phenomena that isn't quite necessarily allied or aligned with the organisation, that can be problematic. So is it a question of it's a good one, because there's two elements to this. There's the internal PR that you need to, or the internal battle that you need to have in order to slightly nudge or shift an organisation, and then there's the actual getting a story out maybe without offending necessarily the organisation. And I think there's no easy answer to that. You have I think if something's important enough, then you can read to people on a background basis without being attributed, and you have to be able to trust that person. And journalists' first rule is never to betray their sources. They should be they should be grateful for information. And if you think there's a story that's important enough that should be reported on, and you can cover your back, then or use someone else to do the communication. That's something that is just probably difficult. Yeah, I would tend to use someone else to make that, or to protect yourself. That's one can. And then there's the internal battle of just convincing people to what can be sometimes a slow beast.
It's not normally that bad here. I guess I'm thinking about kind of things that we say about brands and really messing with a lot of the advice that you've given about boiling the story down, what are the key components. When you're writing with an organisational hat on and it's your organisation going out there saying something, there's a whole other load of considerations that often from the advice that you've been giving us contradict the kind of key things that make a story good. Because we have to add in extra stuff that's not really part of the story. It's frustrating. I just wondered if maybe Fair Trade wasn't really like that.
Well, no, Fair Trade was quite a conservative organisation. I guess doing that copy, we had to select people. It was actually produced in November time, it wasn't Fair Trade Fortnight time, so it was kind of unusual. I think it did work for them. They had to get their heads around. But it was important to do that on the evening, so I trade around. So that was an internal. And maybe it's easy for me because I was an outside consultant. So I maybe had more of a license to kind of like, I don't know, sense I was irritating some people because they wanted to protect Fair Trade Fortnight. And however, it was that. Yeah, but then what I'm saying in here is actually just, it's about giving your reports and press materials enough depth and breadth and appeal. So I don't know if that necessarily contradicts what was.
I guess it's more the release, like boiling it down and like the key things that you say about the story, like what is the headline, like how are you selling it, and getting that through. If you're wanting everything that your organisation puts up to look a certain way, and then the story is never exactly about that, because what we want people to know about our organisation is not story.
Well, the thing is that the story is about what you think is important. So it's in the context of what you think is important, and it's just about communicating that effectively. Or as effectively possible. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't like to think it would necessarily contradict, because it's basically giving your organisation the best chance of putting its arguments out there. So that shouldn't. I would like to think that wouldn't be a contradiction. It's just effective communication. But the headlines are important, because what's the use of a report or a story that doesn't get the right attention just because it might have a subjunctive in the introduction and I'm not talking about this, because what I'm not talking about is like creating hyperbole or exaggeration. This is about evidence-based material, but actually allowing it to shine. That's all, because I think the data can speak for itself, and it's not about exaggerating. It's not pointing the finger of blame at people. It's just showing what an economic trend is, what a policy is doing to certain people in a clear way. Nothing I've put out there. Everything is factually based, and everything that I would whether it's fair trade or everything will be fact checked. It's all proper, careful stuff. But even then, it's still what I think really newsworthy, and it needs to be.
I have a question, if it's okay. This question is from our colleague in Peru who works in Nut and Dab, which is a network organisation. He'd like to know if you have any tips on keeping the relationship with journalists alive, especially when there's maybe nothing new to give them in terms of information, and then typically they get people contacting them all the time. Have you had any tips?
That is difficult. I mean, if you have nothing new to give, it depends. I mean, you might not have anything new to give in terms of something coming from your organisation, but there may be something new to have. What are they writing about? If you follow what they do, and there may be something that you have in common. There may be something that there may be something insightful for them to learn from your perspective and your work. I guess that's the way to do it. And complimenting people on their stories always goes down really well. And suggesting a potential follow-up, but it has to be very well judged. And I think is a good way of keeping in touch with people. And sometimes, if you've got nothing to give people, you have nothing to give people. So silence is good. And so when you do have something, hopefully they will sit up and take notice. So it's important not to kind of as you suggest, to kind of communicate too often. If there is literally nothing to say, that's okay.
Someone typing, but I'm not sure if it's a question. But I have a quick question, if that's all right.
Yes, please.
Some of our partners work in countries where the attitudes and views towards tax are very different to what's been happening in some of the Western countries, and if that makes sense. And I wondered if you had any tips on how to communicate with journalists when it's a hostile attitude towards tax, and they want to keep tax down, and they're not too fussed about tax avoid, and they want tax avoid.
So that's difficult. But you have to show people the facts. You have to be able to sit down with people, whether it's an event, maybe, a seminar or a debate, or a certain function, and be able to have the confidence, technical hinterland, and reference, be able to show why that your argument has validity and might even be more acceptable. I think when people understand the 30 to 40 years that we've had in terms of globalisation, that they can see the rising inequality, that they can see that lower business taxes haven't actually produced huge rises necessarily in living standards or investments in social and economic infrastructure. If you can show people that, then hopefully they can begin to recognise that. And if they can see that some of the corruption that their country may be suffering also has in common the way that companies are kind of used to extract wealth from a particular country, if you can show them that a mining company or a consumer company isn't paying much tax in that particular country, yet they're making huge profits, then hopefully they can begin to get the story.
Work on your journalism, change it.
But it's all, yeah.
Do I have time to get in a couple more questions?
Yeah,
Is that all right?
sure, yeah.
There are two questions from Olivia, who is working in Ireland. And she wondered if you could say something about balancing inside login and relationships with power holders, the government and private sector, with engaging critical copy. This is what Herbert said, is a rest with the organisation, and how do you navigate this? So balancing inside lobbying relationships with the engaging critical.
Yeah. The lobbying comes from the organisation, presumably it's the kind of it's a question of balancing action aids.
I think she means relationships, maintaining advocacy relationships with people you're targeting and what the story
that's a very, very difficult.
Yeah.
That's a delicate situation.
She said there's a complete disinterest in the international journalists trying to give police attention tend to hold them, and how do you overcome this and different?
Yeah, I can imagine Ireland is a tough country. I will have to think about that, and I will think about that, because Ireland has built its basis of having these American companies come in. I guess there's two questions here, isn't there? There's one about how to sell these stories into a country where it's hard, it's perceived that to write a story in an act of anti-patriotism. And then there's also the question of how not to upset people. key players that you're lobbying. I think it's a long-term game, actually. This is not an overnight thing. And you have to find arguments, data and research that undermine the current state of play. And the fact is that Europe is obviously, the EU is obviously trying to change this situation. And then you might want to get some allies in Europe to somehow get some of their arguments and try and use them on business journalists and national news editors to get a sense, well, this is the future, well, this is what we're going to deal with. So we're going to have to create a different type of economy, a different type of tax system. So this is how we're going to do it. So you need to talk to people who are going to try and create, sort of island out for the next 5 to 10 years like this. I haven't thought this through very much, but I think there's elements there.
Well, maybe we can always follow up.
Yeah, I would very much like to.
Was there another question?
No, I think they were kind of one.
Yeah. Just noticed that you mentioned that pension funds are getting worse, and also
You actually kept attention.
and also that it's getting harder to sell in a headline because everybody's got on it.
Yeah.
Just wondered, with having been in the industry for 26 years and watched things change over time, if there are any other trends or anything you can see emerging about what the current trend is.
What I'm saying is everyone's getting wise. Selling in headlines. It was actually the revealed part of the headline. That you used the word revealed, colon, rather than but I think everyone has always been trying to sell stories in a short space of time. The trend. I guess we are living, in terms of the media, in amazingly interesting times, as cliche goes. We are living the best times and the worst of times. Another cliche, but the worst of times. More journalists are in prison now than they have been. Seeing the trends up. Number of deaths of journalists is very much trending upwards, although this year is trending upwards. The economics of journalism are very, very challenged. So those are the the tough times. Best times, the fact that we're seeing a real, I think, interest in investing and proper views. Everyone says, well, there's the end of investment view. I actually disagree with that completely. You need to see BuzzFeed invest in journalism. You see the Daily Mail invest in a new investing desk. The Guardian has obviously got a very strong investigative desk. So in Britain, it's very good. In Europe, you look at what's happening in France with media parks. In Holland, their correspondent and journalism, crowdfunding, journalism there, the correspondents do really well. Germany, Corrective. These are new organisations that are really beginning to develop well. So I think that is really, really encouraging. You have Europe, the OCCRP, been amazing, which probably they are probably the best journalists in the world. Better than ICIJ. So on that basis, investment is very strongly. There's Mexico that would be awful because we don't know what's going on there, but so in terms of trend, I think there is. I think its future's pretty bright. The cloud, a lot of it is philanthropically funded, and at the moment, Vogue is for people to invest in journalists. Whether that lasts is a question. So that now we need to create alternative income streams. But that's always been a challenge. So I think people are more interested in business and economics, and so I do think development can excel in that context, definitely. In the context of what I was saying earlier. And I think the growth of budget transparency, I think it's really interesting. People being more interested in how their government money is being spent. I think that's studios and that whole transparency idea, really about because part of that increasing censorship and willing these two forces. We'll see more journalists being chasing corruption stories or exile as they carry on.
I had one more question. It was really about the kind of the robustness of the figures and data. Because I have run good stories before on polling that's been not massively strong, it's just relatively strong. But then when you're kind of you're calculating tax things and doing equivalent, sometimes the numbers can get quite woolly. So in the price of offshore, the figure that was it? The guy who wrote the McKinsey guy who wrote the report calculated out how much tax they would have paid. Yeah. But my mind's really struggling to work out how you would work that out.
I did calculate that.
You did calculate that. How did you calculate?
Well, that was quite easy because you basically look at the interest. If you had an amount of money, you looked at the interest that you could get from 21 trillion. You think you can calculate it. And then that would be your income. Then you tax that income at like it might be 20%.
Wouldn't that vary in like different jurisdictions?
Well, it would. That's why it's a low number. You can always go conservative. Okay. So you go. So I think we.
So that's why you said it's very conservative.
Yeah. So we took the revenue figure, we took the tax figure from the lower end of the estimate. Yeah. And we took the low tax rates.
So I'm thinking, did you try and calculate where they were based and what the different rates were? Because that starts to become
you could have done that, and you could have done that and had individual countries calculation. Maybe that's a good time to do
that. How important do you think is it that figures are exact, or that they're just a kind of fairly good guess? So if you're saying it's a conservative estimate.
It depends. I mean, I think. I'm doing a story at the moment about how much lawyers have made from this very arcane world of international treaty arbitration, where companies sue countries, arbitration courts back. And I looked at all the costs that incur, and not all of the costs are disclosed. Maybe only about 40%. So I've basically got the figures of 40% extrapolated from that. And I think, so we don't say it's definitive, it's estimated to be. I think that's completely fair. And as long as your sample size is reasonably big, then I think
how much do you tend to get called out on it? Do you get your working question budget?
That's a lot. With the Bureau, we always put our methodology out there. All our findings, our spreadsheets are all put out there. Our methodologies, which are technically peer reviewed. I did a story on we calculated the size and scale of the financial lobby in the UK, and so we went through all sorts of consultation, registries, the whole lot. And we ran everybody up, we ran everything past them, and we created our own kind of ballpark figure for how much was could expect to earn as a financial lobbyist, which we got it peer reviewed, and we had discussions, quite robust ones with some people, but we put everything out there, and on that basis, we hardly had any. We got 140 organisations down. We had 2 complaints one master supervisor and our estimate by $250,000 from 19, 27 recorders, and the other one wants to be on the list. So, I'll make the point is that you have to, but you can mitigate being called out, but then when you do put something out, people will try and pick it. That's why you have to be peer-reviewed or robust. That story that we did, housing story, did that one, when we ran a bit of guardian and I think it wasn't. And the social affairs editor got a call from somebody, from an MP, I think it was, and he said, I think it's not right, that's not right, blah, blah, blah. And actually, we were right. The MP got the wrong end of the stick, but I had a nervous moment when he started putting things out there, but actually, he actually got the wrong end of the stick. So he was cool.
I have one more question. So I think, so basically kind of our partners or organizations which are part of this project and kind of audience of the webinar. There's a mixture of big ones and which also have this kind of research arm and are kind of working almost as journalists, doing their own kind of research, investigation, coming up with this revealed, right, kind of stories. But then there's quite a few, and probably more than those big ones, organizations which do not have that capacity to research, But still, the question is like, how in those contexts, I guess the role of those NGOs may be changed. They are maybe not necessarily the ones who are coming up with their own kind of stories, but maybe using products of other research organizations, like yours as well, or ActionAid and so on, and then maybe using third parties basically research, trying to create a story in their context. And I wonder if there's maybe you have any kind of views on this, how to maybe do this, because I think this is the reality for quite a few. That they will never generate their own stuff, but they will also find out from your report about all these trillions and billions and all of it. So how maybe third parties' information can be created as a news in their context, and then I guess it's a question of this role of maybe leading this stuff. Those journals may not maybe come across, the report of in Britain or wherever, or trying to translate all the local journalists in research from abroad.
That is, I can imagine that being. And that's tricky in some respects, because you have to really understand the nuance of your a distance to the research. You didn't generate it, so you're translating it in a sense of trying to push it on to the other parts. So you just have to, I guess, really first of all understand what you're talking about, what the research is trying to do. That's the most, and if you can tell, I don't think it's necessarily that much different to any normal press officer's role, because you are really trying to excite and encourage people to report on research that you haven't done. Well, that's the same as most press officers, really, generally. So, in that sense, you are just like a normal media officer, doing the same, going through the same process as a main kind of outlines. So there's probably less disparity than you think, because you just receive the report. You might have to do a different press release, and then you just bear in mind that some of the principles that might be important, some of which you might think were referred to here. So, I think. And if you're in doubt, then get in touch with the people who wrote the report. So then you're completely clear again.
Yes, and then also it's very important as much as possible. Maybe it's also not necessarily always possible to contextualize. We talk about this when maybe global figures, or like even like I don't know, McDonald's case or whatever. But that's the reason. In order to maybe still create that kind of local knowledge about tax justice issues, a typical case, but the ability to contextualize that story, it may be possible, but also may not. If you don't have access to data, maybe, or if they are not really covering your country, or.
See, the global stories might be hard to translate, but then, today, I've got to think so much report today on foreign direct investments and how much, who are the world's biggest foreign direct investors, surprisingly, in North America, China, Netherlands and Luxembourg. They have these kind of mailbox companies going forward. Now, and the way they did that was that they had a number of countries in which you can see who was the biggest FDI, foreign direct investor. Spain, Turkey, Austria, they were all included in that report. Now there is an opportunity, and you can really make a country-specific story. Once see they have a national network, which I don't think they do. And even in the price of offshore, there were individual countries, capital flight figures, which is one of the reasons why it didn't go all over the world, because there's 35 different countries at least, and maybe more. With James Henry, he went through the whole capital flight figures, and so every country, that's one of the reasons why I did actually go through all of their own stories.
Who did you say for country?
So much.
So much. Yeah,
it's pretty nice. And I'll tell you what, Action Nation could actually do. They only really concentrated on European countries. Click on Africa. They could do exactly the same for maybe, and then you should talk to them.
But the country coverage on that report is definitely great. If there was even like exactly.
Exactly.
But it's I guess it is a question of even for also for bigger, like also Action and stuff, so to do the research, so in order to reach more international data, how relevant. Do we have more of them?
Okay. Good. Thank you very much for staying in this room.
Thank you very much. It was really great. It was really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.